Welcome back. Previously we have designed this data sources window where users input their text either from files or manually by pasting or typing. Using this window, users will be able to align both of the texts or process them separately by paragraphs, sentences or words. And in this part we are going to provide the most crucial backend for it, mainly enabling and disabling buttons, using the text changed event, aligning two texts, and aligning each of them separately as word tables, which consist of two columns and either one row or multiple rows. So let's get to it. Press F7 to go to backend. First, let's find the button open file one-click event. Right now we reference a specific text box, which is a problem in terms of universality, because this way you cannot use this code to load text into the target text box. As a result, you will need to repeat all the same code for the button to open a file for the target text box, changing only the text box name. Of course, this is very unprofessional and we are going to correct it. What we are going to do is create another method below, private void. I will name it openFile. To make it universal, we will make it accept a text box control as an argument. Press Ctrl dot and hit enter. I will name it textbox. Now you can simply move the code from the click event into our new method. Actually, let's rename the argument to text editor. Then, instead of txtEditor1, which is a control defined in the markup, reference the argument instead. And this simple change makes it universal. All you need to do is reference this method in the click event of both buttons for opening files. But make a descriptive comment, because now you will only type the name of the method. So using this button we can open a file and read its content into the source text box. Just type the name of the method and the name of the text box that will accept the text of a file. In this case we should pass txtEditor1. Now you can simply copy these two lines, find the button openFile click event and paste them there. Just remember that now you need to read the content into the target text box, so you pass txtEditor2. Alright, let's move this event below the button openFile click event. Also, let's write a summary for the openFile method. I will just copy the comment. Open a file and read its content into the specified text box. And text editor is text box to read the text to. Let's now test how it works. I will first check if the source text box gets text from the docs file. It gets text just like before. Let's now test the target text box using an Excel sample. Okay, the target text box now gets text as well. We do now need to enable our buttons when we have text here and here. So for that we need to access our txtEditor text changed event, and here we will first check if the source or target text box contains no text. We can remove it. Well, one of the reasons why I did not want to use simple binding is because we don't just check if the text is here or not. We will also check if it is any meaningful text, if it's not just white space on uline or something like that. So for this we will create a helper method. So I will go to the qp helpers class and create here a new method. It needs to be public static string clear blank characters. We will accept here string text. First let's leave a summary. So clear white space, new line, vertical tab, maybe something else, and text is text that needs clearing. Actually we can return it as one line. It's going to be text replace. First we will replace white spaces. So white space, and we will replace it with string empty. Then we will replace new lines. So replace, and here escape character, and we will replace it with string empty. Then again replace environment new line. Let's move this to another row. Replace new line with again string empty. And then replace vertical tab, and that is V. And we replace it with again string empty. And finally replace another variation of new line, and that will be R, and again string empty. Okay, so basically this is as far as I remember, it is a combination of R and N, but sometimes in other systems the default is N or R. Alright, and now we will use this method. So we check if, and our class shortcut is qp. So if qp dot clear blank characters, and we pass here txt editor1 text, and we check if it equals empty. We need to do the same check for the target text box. So qp clear blank characters text editor 2 text. So if any of these are empty, we are going to disable the button to align text. Well, this khaki button. So button align to text is enabled equals false. Otherwise, if source and target text boxes contain text, so else we will enable the button to align text. So copy this and change false to true. And then we will need to check separately this text box and this text box, because each of them has associated controls. So we'll check if the source text box does not contain text. So we check if, and we can copy this, actually qp. Then we will disable the source menu. So menu underscore source is enabled equals false. Otherwise, so if the source text box contains text, else we enable the source menu, and menu source is enabled equals true. And then we need to check the same for the target text box. So if the target text box doesn't contain text, txt editor 2 text, disable the target menu underscore target, I guess. Yeah. And if the target text box contains text, enable the target menu. And we can now check it. So type text here, and you see this menu is now enabled, but the button is still disabled. And only if we have both of these text boxes, this button will be enabled. Alright, so now let's deal with our button to align to text. So mainly we will just deal with text processing. Let's go to our button align to text. First we will get the source text cleared from markers. So string source text equals txt editor1 dot text dot replace, and here in braces we type the marker character. Now pay attention, I have just copied this character from the demo project, because I could not even correctly paste it into Word or something else, and if I'm not mistaken, it was even invisible. And this marker, as far as I remember, it can occur either as a bullet list marker or as a table marker. I don't remember exactly, but nevertheless I suggest that you get this character from my GitHub repository. So replace this character with string empty. Well, if you are not going to actively work with Word documents, you don't really have to care about this. But for me, when I was processing constantly 2 pairs of Word documents, this was often an issue for me. Alright, so now let's get the target text cleared from markers, and here target text, txt editor true, text replace, and the same. And I do suggest that you use a variable instead of control, because I have manually tested and it's always slower than using just a variable which stores the same information but without the need to constantly reference the control. Next, let's create an array for source fragments. So an array for source fragments. It's going to be string array source fragments. I don't type sentences because we can actually have paragraphs, sentences, or words. So then we will have an array for target fragments. And then we check. Well, first of all, before we move forward, we need to define what kind of fragmentation we need. So paragraphs, sentences, or words. So we will check. If we align by paragraphs, a slightly different technique is used for each of them, and that is if combo box separator dot selected index equals 0, we will split the source text by new lines. We type source fragments equals source text dot split, and here we will create a new string array, and that is with what we are going to split it. So environment new line, then its variations. And then after the comma, we will remove empty entries. String split options, remove empty entries. Alright. Oh, actually not item, but index. And then we will do the same for the target. So we actually need to put in curly braces. So split the target text by new lines. And that's target fragments and target text. Otherwise, so if we align by sentences, i.e. combo box separator selected index equals 1, we will split the source text by new lines, but also periods, exclamation, and question marks. So add here a period, an exclamation mark, and a question mark. And again split the target text by new lines, periods, exclamation, and question marks. And again copy this. Otherwise, oh, not just if, but else if. So if we align by words, we can leave this out, split the source text by new lines and white spaces. So just put a white space here, and you don't need this. Same here. And split the target text by new lines and white spaces. And after that, after you have fragmented these texts, you might want to remove fragments that are empty, well, according to your needs, but I always do that. So remove source fragments that are empty or white space. So source fragments equals source fragments, and now we should have a bit of link. So where, press Ctrl dot, let's call it S, and we check if string is null or white space S, and we convert all of this to an array, because source fragments is an array. Do the same for the target fragments. So remove target fragments that are empty or white space. Target fragments. Target fragments. It's not necessary if you don't have a license protection, but I do. And the only limitation that I have previously put is that users will be able to work with only 100 entries at a time. So we will check. If the program is licensed, and before we proceed, we need to create another window. So add new window, and let's call it window_align fragments. So in this window you have just fragmented them. You just get the text and fragment them. But in the next window you will be able to conduct more specific operations. So window align fragments. Alright, we don't need to change anything here. Let's just close it and move to the Windows folder. Well, just go to its backend, and because we have windows, two different windows, so this window and this window, we would want to close this window first and then open this window. And out of the box, this functionality is not provided, if I'm not mistaken. So we will need to create a wrapper here, and this wrapper will first close the caller window and only then open window align fragments. So create another class here, public static class, window align fragments manager. Let's give it a summary, a wrapper for C window align fragments, and it will have a method. So public static void close previous and show. It will accept the parameters that we need, in this case two string arrays for source and target fragments. So source fragments, then another string array target fragments, but also a window to close. So window to close. And here we will not create it today, but we can leave a summary here. Closes the colon window and shows window align fragments. Source fragments obtained from the source text. And let's copy and paste it here. Target fragments obtained from the target text. And window to close is the colon window, which needs to be closed. Well, of course, if you want this window to stay, you don't need this wrapper and you can just use the default constructor out of the box. But still, I prefer to first close this window before opening this one. So to do, close the caller and show this window. I have just created it only to have a method to accept this data. But the processing of this data will be added later. That's it for this window. So if the program is licensed, qp._is licensed, we shall pass all fragments, and it looks like window align fragments manager, and we call its method close previous and show, and we pass here source fragments, target fragments, and this window. This already refers to this window data sources. Otherwise, so if the program is not licensed, and again we need to create another variable. So let's create a region here. I'll call it private members, and we will just create here one private constant variable, m limit max entry count, and by default it will be equal to 100. So let's leave a summary. If the program is not licensed, this is the max number of entries to work at a time. So no matter how many fragments you have, if their number exceeds 100, only the first 100 elements will be taken into account. So, well, it's just my own limitation. You can design whichever you want. So else, and pass only first max fragments. I know it sounds very weird, but I don't know a better formulation. And what we do here is copy this, but after each of these arrays we type take, and here we pass mlimit max entry count and convert it to array again. And the same here. So here, well, let's now check it. Right now I have an unlicensed program. So you see right now I don't have a license. So I will put test data here. When I don't have a license, only the first 100 elements will be taken. Let's put a breakpoint here to check how many fragments we have. Press here, and you see that despite the fact that we have obviously more than 100 elements, we get only 100. As you see, I have here 182. Oh, and if we change it to words, we have again only 100, and you see it correctly reacts. But of course, if I have a license, these limits are not applied, so they are passed as they are. And now let's provide backend for these align as tables buttons. So let's go to source item align as table. Let's first deal with single row. I will leave a to do here. So align text fragments of the text in the source text box as a table, which consists of 2 columns and 1 row. I know the wording is pretty bad, and I will create a dedicated method for it. Private void align as table single row, which will accept text. Let's leave a summary here. Let's copy this from here. Align text fragments of the text in one text box as a table which consists of 2 columns and 1 row. And text is text in a text box. We will create a list of source fragments because we will constantly add to it. So list, press Ctrl dot, and in square braces type string, which is the type of the list, and call it source list string. And the same for the target fragments. A list of target fragments and target list. So first of all, we will get tables in text, because the Word document might contain multiple tables. String tables. And the reason why I use string array is because when we open Word documents in our program, we get raw text. And this raw text can contain special blank characters that exist in the text, which can be used as table markers. So string tables equals text.split. And here we will split by new string array. And here again I have to use the same character. Well, you can either copy it from our button align to text method. Here we simply removed it. Actually, we can clear it from, let's type word table markers. Here we simply remove them because we don't really need them. But when we align some data as table, we do need them for separation purposes, because actually you can consider this as a marker of the table. So again, I usually remove empty entries. Then we will iterate through every table. So iterate through all tables for each string table in tables. And again, we still work with strings because actually all source and target texts are of string type. So we'll first check if the table is empty, and that can be the case when you, for example, have a table with just one cell and it is empty. So if table equals /r, so we simply skip. So continue. But if it's not empty, we get columns from the table. So string array called columns equals table table.split, and we again split it with this new string array. And here we again paste our characters. So we will split it using this. So like this, and string split options, and remove empty entries. Then we are going to get the source text. So get the source text from the source column. So string source text. Again, here we imply that we have two columns but only one row. Roughly speaking, this is the same as this. So it's a table with one row but two columns. But in this specific case, it's a word table which consists here of two columns and one row. So columns, and we get the first element dot replace, and again we replace this character with string empty, because we have already used it and we don't really need it. And then we will get source fragments. So get source fragments from the source text. So I will create a string array source fragments equals source text dot split, and again new string array, environment new line and its variations, and again string split options, remove empty entries. Then we are going to add source fragments to the list. So source list dot add range, and here source fragments. So for each table we get the first column and add it to the overall source list. And every time for each table we check if the second column exists. So if the second column exists, if it doesn't, there is little purpose to such tables, but still, who knows what kind of form the data is contained in. So if columns.length is more than 1, we get target text. So get target text from the second column. So string target text equals columns and 1 dot replace, and again we need to replace this character, and we replace it again with string empty. Well, actually I guess we could just copy it. So here get target fragments from the target text. So target fragments, and we split target text with the same stuff, and then we add target fragments to the list, target list, and add range and target fragments. And then after we have iterated through all tables that could be in the document, we again check if the program is licensed. So let's go to our button align to texts and copy this part and get back here. Alright, so if the program is licensed, we pass all fragments, and we have a list here because we have added different string arrays. So source list, but because this method accepts arrays, we need to convert it to array, and the same here, target list to array. And if the program is not licensed, we pass only first max fragments, and the same source list, but we convert it to array later here. And the same for target list. So we have made a universal method for aligning text as word tables that contain 2 columns but 1 row. So it's not to do anymore, because we can just call this method align as table single row, and we only pass the text, and that is going to be txt-editor1.text. And we can just copy it and go to target item align as table single row. Here, txt-editor2text in the target text box. Let's now check it. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I have created a sample Word document with 2 tables. Each of them contains only 1 row but 2 columns. You see that each of them contains 2 lines, but if I just try to select all and copy and paste it here, look what happens. I'm table 1 column 1, me2 from table 1 column 1, but then immediately goes table 1 column 2, but actually it is different from when you read this file programmatically, because look here for the difference, and you should keep it in mind. So if you read it and click align as 1 row, you will correctly get 2 lists. So here, source list, which contains 4 different elements, table 1 column 1, table 2 column 1, okay, and target list column 2 everywhere, okay. But when you just copy it from the Word document into here, it gets a little bit different, and if you try to align it as 1 row table, you will get all the elements in the source list. And I suspect that when you copy from Word, it removes these blank characters. So it is useful when you try to read files, not just copy their content. And now let's deal with tables that have multiple rows, like here. To do this, we will use it as a sample. So copy it and paste it here, and align as table multiple rows. Align text fragments of the text in one text box as a table which consists of 2 columns and multiple rows. Again, we have a list of source fragments and a list of target fragments, and actually the difference is quite bigger than it might seem, because right now we start to get rows in the table. So we have rows and we iterate through all rows, and here string row, and if the row is empty, and we get cells from the row, and here string cells. But here, instead of processing the text and dealing with its fragmentation, we simply add the left cell to source fragments list, to the source fragments list. So source list, and here dot add, and we add cells and the first element, and we check if the second column exists. So if cell's length is greater than 1, we add the right cell. So add the right cell to the target fragments list. So target list dot add cells 1. Okay, and the license part will remain the same. Now we can just call this method. I'll copy its summary. So align text fragments of the text in the source text box as a table, 2 columns and multiple rows. So align as table multiple rows, and here we pass txt editor 1 text, and the same for target item. So target item align as table multiple rows. In the target text box align as table txt editor 2, and now we can check it. So let's put a breakpoint here. Oh no, not here. Align as table multiple rows, and here. So multiple rows, and source list 5, target list 5. Source list table 1 column 1 row 1, table 1 column 1 row 2, table 1 column 1 row 3. If you check it, they are here, and then we have another table. So table 2 column 1 row 1, table 2 column 1 row 2. And you see here the thin for the new line. I can deal with it later, I guess, and surprisingly it's not present in the target list. It's only in the source list. The last thing for this part is I want the register button to be visible when we don't have a license. It's easily fixable. By default it is collapsed, and actually it shouldn't be collapsed. So here. Alright, that's better. That's it for the text processing. In future parts we will finish this window and start working with the window align fragments, where we will be able to manually or automatically match fragments according to our needs. Thank you for watching, and if this was helpful, please subscribe, it will help me a lot, and see you in the next part.